Hey guys, let's talk about Natalie Wood. Natalie Wood was born on July 20th, 1938. She was an American actress who began her career in film as a child and successfully transitioned to young adult roles. Natalie was born Natalie Zakharenko in San Francisco, California, to Maria Zudilova, known variously as Mary, Marie, and Musia, and her second husband, carpenter Nicholas Zakharenko. Natalie's mother was born in Barnaul, Siberia. Her maternal grandfather owned soap and candle factories, as well as an estate outside the city. With the start of the Russian Civil War, his family left Russia, resettling as refugees in the Chinese city of Harbin. In 1925, Maria married Alexander Tadalov, an Armenian mechanic. They had a daughter, Olga. The Tadalovs came to America by ship in 1930 and divorced in 1936. Natalie's father was born in Ussurisk. Her paternal grandfather, a chocolate factory worker who joined the anti-Bolshevik civilian forces during the war, was killed in a street fight between the Red Army and the White Russian soldiers. After that, his widow and 3 sons fled to Shanghai, subsequently relocating to Vancouver at the time of Natalie's paternal grandmother's remarriage in 1927. By 1933, they moved to the U.S. Nicholas met Maria Tadalov 4 years his senior, while she was still married to her first husband. Natalie's parents were married in February 1938, 5 months before her birth. In 1942, they bought a home in Santa Rosa, where Natalie was noticed by members of a crew during a film shoot downtown. After Natalie started acting as a child, David Lewis and William Goetz, studio executives at RKO Radio Pictures, changed her last name to Wood, in reference to director Sam Wood. Natalie's only full sibling, Svetlana Gurdin, was born in Santa Monica in 1946. Known as Lana Wood, she also became an actress. A few weeks before her 5th birthday, Natalie made her uncredited film debut in a 15-second scene in the film Happyland. Despite the brief part, she attracted the notice of director Irving Pitchell. He remained in contact with Natalie's family for 2 years, advising them when another role came up. The director telephoned Natalie's mother and asked her to bring her daughter to Los Angeles for a screen test. Natalie's mother became so excited that she packed the whole family off to Los Angeles to live. Natalie's father opposed the idea, but his wife's overpowering ambition to make Natalie a star took priority. According to Natalie's younger sister Lana, Pitchell discovered her and wanted to adopt her. Natalie, then 7 years old, got the part. She played a post-World War II German orphan opposite Orson Welles as Natalie's guardian and Claudette Colbert in Tomorrow is Forever. When Natalie was unable to cry on cue, her mother tore a butterfly to pieces in front of her to ensure she would sob for a scene. Orson Welles later said that Natalie was a born professional, quote, so good she was terrifying, unquote. Natalie acted in another film directed by Pitchell, The Bride Wore Boots, and went on to 20th Century Fox to play Gene Tierney's daughter in The Ghost and Mrs. Muir. Natalie's best-known film as a child was Miracle on 34th Street, starring Maureen O'Hara at Fox. She plays a cynical girl who comes to believe a kindly department store holiday season employee, portrayed by Edmund Gwenn, is the real Santa Claus. The film has become a Christmas classic. Natalie was counted among the top child stars in Hollywood after the film and was so popular that Macy's invited her to appear in the store's annual Thanksgiving Day parade. Film historian John C. Tibbetts wrote that for the next few years following her success in Miracle, Natalie played roles as a daughter in a series of family films: Driftwood, At Republic, Scudda Hoo, Scudda Hay, Chicken Every Sunday, The Green Promise, Fred McMurray's daughter in Father Was a Fullback with O'Hara, Margaret Sullivan's daughter in No Sad Songs for Me, the youngest sister in Our Very Own, Never a Dull Moment, James Stewart's daughter in The Jackpot, Dear Brat, Joan Blondell's neglected daughter in The Blue Veil, The Rose Bowl Story, and Just for You, the daughter of Betty Davis's character in The Star. In all, Natalie appeared in over 20 films as a child. She also appeared on television in episodes of Kraft Theater and Chevron Theater. Because Natalie was a minor during her early years as an actress, she received her primary education on the studio lots wherever she was contracted. California law required that until age 18, child actors had to spend at least 3 hours per day in the classroom. She was a straight-A student and one of the few child actors to excel in arithmetic. Director Joseph L. Mankiewicz, who directed her in The Ghost of Mrs. Muir, said that, quote, "In all my years in the business, I never met a smarter moppet," unquote. Natalie remembered that period in her life saying, quote, "I always felt guilty when I knew the crew was sitting around waiting for me to finish my 3 hours. As soon as the teacher let us go, I ran to the set as fast as I could," unquote. Natalie's mother continued to play a significant role in her daughter's early career, coaching her and micromanaging aspects of her career, even after Natalie acquired agents. As a child actress, Natalie received significant media attention. By age 9, she had been named the most exciting juvenile motion picture star of the year by Parents magazine. In the 1953-54 television season, Natalie played Ann Morrison, the teenage daughter in The Pride of the Family, an ABC situation comedy. She appeared as a teenager on episodes of the Pepsi-Cola Playhouse, Public Defender, Mayor of the Town, Four-Star Playhouse, the Ford Television Theater, and General Electric Theater, and also appeared in a television version of Heidi. She described the GE Theater episode she did, Carnival, as one of the best things she ever did. She had roles in the feature films The Silver Chalice and One Desire. Natalie was 16 when she co-starred with James Dean in Sal Mineo and Rebel Without a Cause, Nicholas Ray's film about teenage rebellion. Natalie had to sign a long-term contract with Warner Brothers, but she was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress. She later said it was the first script she read that she actually wanted to do, as being told to do by her parents. She also said her parents were opposed to her doing it. Quote, "Until then, I did what I was told," unquote. She continued to guest star in anthology TV shows like Studio One in Hollywood, Camera 3, Kings Row, Studio 57, Warner Brothers Presents, and the Kaiser Aluminum Hour. She had a small but crucial role in John Ford's The Searchers and was the female lead in A Cry in the Night. Natalie graduated from Van Nuys High School in 1956. She signed with Warner Brothers and was kept busy during the remainder of the decade in many girlfriend roles, which she found unsatisfying. The studio cast her in 2 films opposite Tab Hunter, hoping to turn the duo into a box office draw that never materialized. The Burning Hills, a Western, and The Girl He Left Behind. She guest starred in episodes of Conflict. Warner Brothers tried teaming her with Ephraim Zimbalist Jr. in Bombers B-52. Then she was given the lead in a prestigious project, Marjorie Morningstar. As Marjorie Morningstar, Natalie played the role of a young Jewish girl in New York City who has to deal with the social and religious expectations of her family as she tries to forge her own path and separate identity. Tibbets observed that Natalie's characters in Rebel, Searchers, and Morningstar began to show her widening range of acting styles. Her former childlike sweetness was now being combined with a noticeable restlessness that was characteristic in the youth of the 1950s. She was leading lady to Frank Sinatra in Kings Go Forth, then refused roles and was put on suspension by Warner's. This lasted for a year until February 1959. She returned to be a leading lady to James Garner and Cash McCall. After Natalie appeared in the box office flop All the Fine Young Cannibals, she lost momentum. Natalie's career was in a transition period, having until then consisted of roles as a child or as a teenager. Biographer Suzanne Finstad wrote that a turning point in Natalie's life as an actress took place when she saw the film A Streetcar Named Desire. Quote, "She was transformed in all of director Elia Kazan and of Vivien Leigh's performance, who became a role model for Natalie. Her roles raised the possibility that one's sensitivity could mark a person as a kind of victim." After a series of bad films, her career was already in decline, according to author Douglas Rathgeb. She was then cast in Kazan's Splendor in the Grass with Warren Beatty. Kazan wrote in his 1997 memoir that the sages of the film community declared her washed up as an actress, but he still wanted to interview her for his next film. Quote, "When I saw her, I detected behind the well-mannered young wife front a desperate twinkle in her eyes. I talked with her more quietly then and more personally. I wanted to find out what human material was there, what her inner life was. Then she told me she was being psychoanalyzed. That did it. Poor RJ, I said to myself. I liked Bob Wagner. I still do," unquote. Kazan cast Wood as the female lead in Splendor, and her career rebounded. He felt that despite her earlier innocent roles, she had the talent and maturity to go beyond them. In the film, Beatty's character was deprived of sexual love with Natalie's character, and as a result turns to another, looser girl. Natalie's character could not handle the sexuality, and after a breakdown, was committed to a mental institution. Kazan writes that he cast her in the role partly because he saw in Natalie's personality a true blue quality with a warmth inside that is held down by social pressure, adding that she clings to things with her eyes, a quality he found especially appealing. Finstad felt that although Natalie had never trained in method acting techniques, working with Kazan brought her to the greatest emotional heights of her career. The experience was exhilarating but wrenching for Natalie, who faced her demons on Splendor. She adds that a scene in the film, as a result of Kazan's wizardry, produced a hysteria in Natalie that may be her most powerful moment as an actress. Actor Gary Lockwood, who also performed in the film, felt that Kazan and Natalie were a terrific marriage because you had this beautiful girl and you had somebody that could get things out of her. Kazan's favorite scene in the film was the last one, when Natalie goes back to see her lost first love, Bud. Quote, "It is terribly touching to me. I still like it when I see it." Unquote. For her performance in Splendor, Natalie received nominations for the Academy Award, Golden Globe Award, and BAFTA Award for Best Actress in a Leading Role. Natalie played Maria, a restless Puerto Rican girl, on the west side of Manhattan and West Side Story, Jerome Robbins and Robert Wise's 1961 film of the stage musical, which was a critical and box office success. Tibbets wrote of similarities in her role in this film and the earlier Rebel. She was to represent the restlessness of American youth in the 1950s, expressed by youth gangs and juvenile delinquency, along with early rock and roll. Both films, he observes, were modern allegories based on the Romeo and Juliet theme, including private restlessness and public alienation. Where in Rebel, she falls in love with a character played by James Dean, whose gang-like peers and violent temper alienated him from his family. In West Side Story, she enters into a romance with a white former gang member whose threatening world of outcasts also alienated him from lawful behavior. Although Natalie's singing in the film was voiced by Marni Nixon, West Side Story is still regarded as one of Natalie's best films. Natalie sang when she starred in the film Gypsy alongside Rosalind Russell. Her appearance in that film led critic Pauline Kael to comment, quote, "Clever little Natalie Wood, the most machine-tooled of Hollywood ingenues," unquote. At the age of 25, Natalie received her third Academy Award nomination for Love with a Proper Stranger, making Natalie, along with Teresa Wright, the youngest person to score 3 Oscar nominations. This record was later broken by Jennifer Lawrence in 2013 and Saoirse Ronan in 2017, both of whom scored their third nominations at the age of 23. Natalie made 2 comedies with Tony Curtis, Sex and the Single Girl and The Great Race, the latter with Jack Lemmon and Peter Falk. In The Great Race, her ability to speak Russian was an asset given to her character, Maggie Dubois, justifying the character's recording the process of the race across Siberia and entering the race at the beginning as a contestant. Director Sidney Pollack was quoted as saying about Wood, quote, "When she was right for the part, there was no one better. She was a damn good actress," unquote. For Inside Daisy Clover and This Property is Condemned, both of which co-starred Robert Redford, Natalie received Golden Globe nominations for Best Actress. After the release of the films, Natalie suffered emotionally and sought professional therapy. She paid Warner Brothers $175,000 to cancel her contract and fired her entire support team, agents, managers, publicists, accountant, and attorneys. In the mid-1960s, she was one of the biggest stars in Hollywood, along with Elizabeth Taylor and Audrey Hepburn. Although many of Natalie's films were commercially successful, at times her acting was criticized. In 1966, Natalie was given the Harvard Lampoon Award for being the worst actress of last year, this year, and next. She was the first performer to attend their ceremony and accept an award in person. The Harvard Crimson wrote that she was quite a good sport. Following a disappointing reception to Penelope, Natalie took a 3-year hiatus from acting. She was announced for I Never Promised You a Rose Garden, but did not appear in it. Natalie co-starred with Diane Cannon, Robert Culp, and Elliot Gould in Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, a comedy about sexual liberation. According to Tibbets, this was the first film in which, quote, the saving leavening of humor was brought to bear upon the many painful dilemmas portrayed in her adult films, unquote. Natalie did not capitalize on the success of Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. After becoming pregnant in 1970 with her first child, Natasha Gregson, she went into semi-retirement and would act in only 4 more theatrical films during the remainder of her life. She made a brief cameo appearance as herself in The Candidate, working once more with Robert Redford. Natalie reunited on the screen with Robert Wagner in the television film of the week, The Affair, and with Laurence Olivier and Wagner in an adaptation of Cat on the Hot Tin Roof for the British series Laurence Olivier Presents, broadcast as a special by NBC. In between these, she made Peeper with Michael Caine. She made cameo appearances on Wagner's primetime detective series Switch in 1978 as Bubble Bath Girl, and Heart to Heart in 1979 as movie star. After another lengthy break, she appeared in the ensemble disaster film Meteor with Sean Connery and the sex comedy The Last Married Couple in America with George Segal and Valerie Harper. Her performance in the latter was praised and considered reminiscent of her performance in Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice. In Last Married Couple, Natalie broke ground. Although an actress with a clean middle-class image, she used the F-word in a frank marital discussion with her husband, played by George Segal. In this period, Natalie had more success in television, receiving high ratings and critical acclaim in 1979 for The Cracker Factory, and especially the miniseries remake of From Here to Eternity with Kim Basinger and William Devane. Natalie's performance in the latter won her a Golden Globe Award for Best Actress in 1980. She starred in The Memory of Eva Riker, released in May 1980, which proved to be her last completed production. At the time of her death, Natalie was filming the $15 million science fiction film Brainstorm, co-starring Christopher Walken and directed by Douglas Trumbull. She was scheduled to make her stage debut on February 12, 1982 in Anastasia at Ahmanson Theater with Wendy Hiller. Natalie had also purchased film rights to the Barbara Wurzba book, Country of the Heart, and was planning to star with Timothy Hutton in the drama about the professional romantic relationship between a tough-minded poet and her much younger student. The material was eventually adapted into a 1990 television film starring Jane Seymour. She expected to follow her performance as Anastasia on the stage with a starring stint in a film adaptation of the work. The ending of Brainstorm had to be rewritten and Natalie's character written out of the last 3 scenes, while a stand-in and sound-alikes were used to replace Natalie for some of her crucial shots. The film was released posthumously on September 30th, 1983, and was dedicated to Natalie in the closing credits. Natalie appeared in 56 films for cinema and television. In one of her last interviews before her death, she was defined as, quote, our sexual conscience on the silver screen, unquote. Following her death, Time magazine noted that although critical praise for Natalie had been sparse throughout her career, she always had work. Natalie's 2 marriages to actor Robert Wagner were highly publicized. They first married on December 28, 1957, in Scottsdale, Arizona, when Natalie was 19. On June 20, 1961, the couple announced their separation in a joint press release and divorced 10 months later on April 27, 1962. Following this starter marriage, Natalie dated Warren Beatty, Michael Caine, and David Niven Jr. She also had a broken engagement in 1965 with Venezuelan shoe manufacturer Ladislav Blatnik. On May 30th, 1969, Natalie married British producer Richard Gregson after dating for nearly 3 years. They had a daughter, Natasha, born on September 29th, 1970. Natalie filed for divorce from Gregson on August 4th, 1971, and it was finalized on April 12, 1972. After a short-lived romance with future California Governor Jerry Brown, Natalie resumed her relationship with Wagner at the end of January 1972. They remarried on July 16th aboard the Ramblin' Rose, anchored off Paradise Cove in Malibu. Their daughter Courtney was born on March 9, 1974. In 2013, former FBI agent Donald G. Wilson claimed that he and Natalie had a 4-year affair from 1973 to 1977 that began when she was pregnant with Courtney Wagner. In 2016, Wilson spoke on camera about his alleged affair with Natalie in a documentary for the cable network Reels. Celebrity bodyguard Chris Herzog has stated that Natalie told his grandmother, an Avalon socialite, she was going to divorce Wagner and that he himself saw Natalie the morning before she disappeared. On November 29, 1981, Natalie died under mysterious circumstances at age 43 during the making of Brainstorm. She had been on a weekend boat trip to Santa Catalina Island on board with her husband, Robert Wagner's 58-foot motor yacht, Splendor. Other than the fact that she drowned, many of the circumstances are unknown. For example, it has never been determined how she entered the water. Natalie was with Wagner, Brainstorm co-star Christopher Walken, and Splendor's captain, Dennis Davern, on the evening of November 28th. Authorities recovered her body at 8 a.m. on November 29th, 1 mile away from the boat, with a small Valiant brand inflatable dinghy beached nearby. Wagner said that she was not with him when he went to bed. The autopsy report revealed that she had bruises on her body and arms, as well as an abrasion on her left cheek, but no indication as to how or when the injuries occurred. Davern had previously stated that Natalie and Wagner argued that evening, which Wagner denied at the time. In his memoir, Pieces of My Heart, Wagner admitted that he had an argument with Natalie before she disappeared. The autopsy found that Natalie's blood alcohol content was 0.14%, and that there were traces of a motion sickness pill and a painkiller in her bloodstream, both of which increases the effects of alcohol. Los Angeles County Coroner Thomas Noguchi ruled the cause of her death to be accidental drowning and hypothermia. According to Noguchi, Natalie had been drinking, and she may have slipped while trying to reboard the dinghy. Her sister Lana expressed doubts, alleging that Natalie could not swim and had been terrified of water all her life, and that she would never have left the yacht on her own by a dinghy. 2 witnesses who were on a nearby boat stated that they had heard a woman scream for help during the night. Natalie was buried in Westwood Village Memorial Park Cemetery in Los Angeles. Representatives of international media, photographers, and members of the public tried to attend her funeral. All were required to remain outside the cemetery walls. Among the celebrities were Frank Sinatra, Elizabeth Taylor, Fred Astaire, Rock Hudson, David Niven, Gregory Peck, Gene Kelly, Elia Kazan, and Laurence Olivier. Olivier flew in from London in order to attend the service. The case was reopened in November 2011 after Davern publicly stated that he had lied to police during the initial investigation and that Natalie and Robert Wagner had an argument that evening. He alleged that Natalie had been flirting with Walken, that Wagner was jealous and enraged, and that Wagner had prevented Davern from turning on the searchlights and notifying authorities after Natalie's disappearance. Davern alleged that Wagner was responsible for her death. Walken hired a lawyer, cooperated with the investigation, and was not considered a suspect by authorities. In 2012, Los Angeles County Chief Coroner amended Natalie's death certificate and changed the cause of death from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. The amended document included a statement that it is not clearly established how Natalie ended up in the water. Detectives instructed the coroner's office not to discuss or comment on the case. On January 14, 2013, the Los Angeles County Coroner's Office offered a 10-page addendum to Natalie's autopsy report. The addendum stated that Natalie might have sustained some of the bruises on her body before she went into the water, but that this could not be definitely determined. Forensic pathologist Michael Hunter speculated that Natalie was particularly susceptible to bruising because she had taken the drug Synthroid. In 2020, a medical doctor and former intern of Noguchi at the time of Natalie's death stated that the bruises were substantial and fitting for someone thrown out of a boat. He claimed that he made those observations to Noguchi. In February 2018, Wagner was named a person of interest by the police in the investigation. The police stated that they know that Wagner was the last person to be with Natalie before she disappeared. In a 2018 report, the Los Angeles Times cited the coroner's report from 2013, saying that Natalie had unexplained fresh bruising on her right forearm, left wrist, and right knee, a scratch on her neck, and a superficial scrape on her forehead. Officials said that it is possible that she was assaulted before she drowned.